Welcome to Deep of Kindness, where real stories touch real hearts. Here you'll find emotional, motivational, and true life stories that inspire hope, compassion, and humanity. Every story reminds us that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's world. Subscribe and be part of a community that believes in love, empathy, and the power of doing good. Because kindness isn't just a word, it's a way of living. The city was unusually quiet that night. Streetlights flickered across the wet roads after a late drizzle, reflecting the glow of passing cars. It was nearly midnight when Arman, a 32-year-old single dad, parked his car outside the hotel where he worked as a chauffeur. He stretched his tired arms and glanced at the photo of his 7-year-old daughter, Hania, hanging from the rearview mirror. Her innocent smile always reminded him why he worked so hard, every extra shift, every long night, all for her future. Just as he leaned back to close his eyes for a few minutes of rest, his phone buzzed sharply on the dashboard. The caller ID made his heart skip. It was from Ms. Zara Malik, his boss, the CEO of Zara Holdings, one of the most powerful women in the city. Arman hesitated a moment before answering. "Hello, ma'am?" he said carefully. But instead of her voice, a man's panicked tone came through. "Sir, this is the event manager from the Imperial Lounge, Mrs. Zara. She's not feeling well. Could you please come and pick her up? She doesn't want security or anyone from the media to see." Arman straightened instantly. "I'm on my way." He didn't think twice. He knew Zara's reputation, a perfectionist, always composed, always in control. Seeing her not well was unimaginable. Within minutes, he started the engine and sped toward the upscale lounge located in the heart of the city's nightlife district. The streets were half empty, yet the glow of neon signs and distant laughter hinted at the chaos that came with the elite nightlife. When Arman arrived, he could already see flashes, paparazzi cameras, waiting like wolves outside the entrance. His heart pounded. If even one photo leaked, Zara's carefully built image could shatter overnight. He parked a little distance away, adjusted his cap, and walked swiftly toward the entrance, blending into the crowd. Inside, the air reeked of expensive perfume and alcohol. Music thumped through the walls, but in one corner, a small commotion had gathered. There she was, Ms. Zara Malik. The woman known for her icy demeanor and ruthless business decisions, now sitting on the edge of a velvet sofa, her eyes half closed, her lipstick smudged, and her phone lying on the floor. A waiter stood awkwardly beside her, unsure what to do. Two reporters hovered at a distance, whispering to each other, their cameras ready. "Ma'am," Arman said softly, approaching her. She looked up, her vision hazy. "Arman," she murmured, recognizing his voice. "Yes, ma'am. Let's get you home," he said gently, helping her to her feet. But as he did, one of the reporters clicked a photo. The flash went off like lightning. Arman's instincts kicked in. He immediately took off his jacket and wrapped it around Zara's shoulders, shielding her face. "No pictures, please," he said firmly, his voice low but commanding. The reporters tried to argue, but one look at Arman's expression, calm yet unyielding, made them back off. He guided Zara carefully through the side exit, holding her steady as she stumbled slightly. Once outside, he opened the car door and helped her in. Inside the car, the tension broke into silence. Only the sound of the rain tapping against the windshield filled the space. Arman started driving, his eyes focused on the road while occasionally glancing at the rearview mirror. Zara leaned her head against the window, her expression distant. The strong, confident CEO looked fragile, vulnerable even. After a few minutes, she spoke, her voice quiet and slurred. "You must think I'm pathetic, don't you?" Arman shook his head. "Not at all, ma'am." She gave a faint, bitter laugh. "Everyone thinks I'm made of steel. That I don't have feelings, that I don't break." Her voice trailed off. He didn't reply because he knew anything he said could sound like pity, something she'd never accept. Instead, he turned up the heater slightly and kept driving. As they passed through the empty streets, Zara continued softly, almost talking to herself. "You know, Arman, sometimes it's easier to be alone. No expectations, no betrayals." Her words were slow, heavy with exhaustion. Arman listened quietly. He didn't know much about her personal life, only rumors. People said she had built her empire alone after her father's death. Some said she had no friends, no family, no one to trust. Looking at her now, he felt a flicker of sympathy. Behind the power and perfection was just another human being, tired and lonely. Zara shifted slightly, closing her eyes. "You're different," she whispered faintly. "You didn't look at me with judgment." Arman smiled faintly but didn't respond. When they reached her mansion, he parked at the gate and stepped out to open the door for her. She was half asleep, so he gently helped her out, supporting her weight as they walked up the steps. The guard at the entrance stared in shock, but Arman gestured for silence. Inside, he guided her to the sofa. She muttered something he couldn't quite catch, something about her mother, and then she drifted into sleep. Arman looked around the vast living room. It was beautiful, spotless, yet cold. Not a single picture of family or friends on the walls. He placed a blanket over her shoulders, removed his jacket from around her, and quietly set her phone and purse on the table. Then, before leaving, he scribbled a small note on a notepad he found nearby. "You're safe, ma'am. Rest well. Arman." He left silently, closing the door behind him. The night air felt colder on his way back. He drove slowly, replaying everything in his head. It wasn't the first time he had seen rich people lose control, but this was different. There was something about the way Zara had spoken, that raw honesty beneath her usual strength, that stayed with him. When he finally reached home, his little daughter Hania was asleep on the couch, clutching her stuffed bear. Arman smiled tiredly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. He whispered, "Never forget, my princess. Kindness always matters, no matter who it's for." As he turned off the light, he couldn't shake the image of Zara's face, not the boss everyone feared, but the woman who, for a moment, looked like she just wanted someone to care. And though he didn't know it then, that one night, the night he quietly saved her from humiliation, was about to change both of their lives forever. The next morning came too soon. The golden rays of dawn slipped through the thin curtains of Arman's small apartment. He sat at the edge of the bed, tying his shoes, while Hania, his little daughter, still slept soundly, her tiny hand curled around her teddy bear. Her peaceful face always gave him strength, even on the hardest days. But today, something felt heavier, a quiet unease in his chest. He replayed the events of the previous night again and again in his mind. The flashing cameras, the way Ms. Zara Malik had leaned against the car window, whispering words soaked with loneliness. He had seen a different side of her, something no one in the office could ever imagine. He poured himself a cup of tea from the old kettle and sighed. "She probably won't even remember," he murmured to himself. "People like her, they don't remember drivers." Still, he dressed neatly. Crisp uniform, polished shoes, clean hands. He dropped Hania off at school and drove to the Zara Holdings headquarters, a glass skyscraper that seemed to touch the sky. Every morning, when he walked into that building, he was reminded of the distance between their worlds. Hers, of power and luxury. His, of survival and quiet dreams. Inside the lobby, everyone was buzzing. The employees greeted each other nervously as they usually did when the CEO was around. Arman overheard two receptionists whispering near the counter. "Did you hear? Ms. Malik didn't return from that party until past midnight." "Really? I thought she never stayed out late." "Apparently, she looked upset when she came in this morning. Didn't even let anyone talk to her." Arman kept walking, pretending not to hear. He didn't want to get involved in gossip. He had done his duty, nothing more. Still, deep inside, he hoped she was all right. When he reached the parking bay, the intercom buzzed. "Arman, please report to the CEO's office," said the secretary's sharp voice. He froze for a second. His heart skipped a beat. The CEO's office? That was rare. The only time Zara Malik personally called anyone from the staff was either to fire them or reprimand them. Taking a deep breath, he straightened his uniform and made his way up to the top floor. The elevator ride felt endless. His mind raced with thoughts. Did someone see us last night? Did a photo leak? Is she angry that I brought her home? When the elevator doors opened, the familiar smell of jasmine and coffee filled the air. The CEO's floor was silent, almost intimidating. Glass walls, white marble floors, and expensive art pieces that most employees never even looked at directly. Zara's personal assistant, Aisha, looked up as he approached. "She's expecting you," she said, her tone unreadable. Arman nodded and knocked lightly on the door before entering. Inside, the office was bright and organized with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Zara sat behind her sleek black desk, her posture as straight as ever, but something in her expression was different. Her usual mask of authority seemed softer, almost human. "Come in, Arman," she said quietly. He stepped forward, unsure of what to say. "Good morning, ma'am." Zara looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Do you remember what time you brought me home last night?" Arman hesitated. "Around 1:30, ma'am." She nodded slowly, tapping her pen against the table. "Did anyone see us?" "No, ma'am," he replied firmly. "I made sure no one followed us. I used the side exit and parked behind the building. You were safe." Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them. A kind of silent trust. Then she leaned back in her chair and said something that caught him completely off guard. "Thank you for last night." The words hung in the air, soft yet powerful. Arman blinked, almost unsure he'd heard correctly. In all the years he had worked there, he had never once heard Zara Malik thank anyone. Not her managers, not her assistants, and certainly not a driver. "Ma'am," he said softly, surprised. Zara gave a faint smile, one that seemed unfamiliar on her usually stern face. "You didn't have to do what you did. You could have walked away, and no one would have known, but you didn't. You saved more than just my reputation, Arman." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You saved my dignity." Arman's throat tightened. He looked down, unsure how to respond. "It was my duty, ma'am." Anyone would have done the same. "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "Not anyone." There was silence for a few seconds. Zara glanced toward the window, her reflection merging with the skyline. "Do you know what the worst part of power is, Arman?" she asked suddenly. He hesitated. "No, ma'am. It's that people stop seeing you as human. They see you as an opportunity, or a name, or a position. And when you finally fall, no one reaches out to catch you. They just watch." Her tone was steady, but there was pain beneath it, the kind that comes from years of loneliness. Arman nodded quietly. "Sometimes strength looks different than people think," he said gently. That made her look at him again, this time not as her driver, but as someone who understood. "You're a single father, right?" she asked softly. "Yes, ma'am. My daughter's name is Hania." Zara smiled faintly. "I noticed the picture in your car once. You must love her very much." "She's my whole world," he said, his eyes softening. For a moment, Zara's expression melted completely. There was warmth there, something she hadn't shown anyone in years. "She's lucky to have you," she said quietly. "And maybe I'm lucky that you were there last night." Arman didn't know what to say. He simply nodded respectfully. "I'm glad I could help, ma'am." Zara took a deep breath and stood up from her chair. She walked over to the window, looking out at the city below, the same city that admired her but never truly knew her. "Arman," she said without turning around, "I don't forget things easily, especially kindness. I just wanted you to know that." Her voice was calm, but carried a promise. Arman bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot." She turned then, her gaze firm again, but her tone gentler than ever. "You may go now. And Arman..." "Yes, ma'am?" "Take the evening off. Spend it with your daughter." That last sentence caught him off guard. She was known for her strictness, never allowing personal favors. But today, she wasn't the CEO. She was simply Zara, a woman who'd been reminded of humanity. Arman smiled faintly. "Thank you, ma'am." As he walked out of her office, the corridors suddenly felt brighter. The same employees who used to whisper about Zara's coldness would never know that behind those glass walls. Something had changed, quietly, profoundly. Back in her office, Zara sat down again, looking at the note she had found on her table that morning, the one Arman had left the previous night. "You're safe, Mom. Rest well. Arman." For the first time in years, she smiled genuinely. The woman who had built an empire on strength realized that sometimes true strength lies not in control, but in compassion. And as the morning sun touched the skyline, Zara Malik decided one thing. She wouldn't pretend to forget what happened that night, or the man who had treated her with dignity when the world was ready to tear her apart. Days slipped quietly into each other after that morning. The storm that had once surrounded Zara Malik seemed to calm, though something inside her had shifted forever. She went about her routines, the early meetings, the endless signatures, the boardroom debates, but now, between one file and another, she found her thoughts wandering toward a certain driver with kind eyes and a steady voice. She noticed things she'd never paid attention to before. Every morning when she arrived, Arman was already there, polishing the black company car till it gleamed. Even after long nights, his uniform was pressed, his shoes shining, his manner respectful but never servile. And when she occasionally saw him take calls, his tone softened, gentle, patient. Once she caught a glimpse of his phone screen, a little girl with 2 pigtails, missing front teeth, smiling wide. Hania. At first, Zara tried to dismiss it. "It's not my concern," she told herself. But something about that picture lingered in her mind, longer than any corporate chart or investment plan. One afternoon, when a sudden downpour flooded the parking lot, she watched from her window as Arman ran through the rain, not to protect the car, but to pull a young receptionist out from under the leaking shade, offering her his own umbrella. Zara felt a strange warmth bloom inside her chest. This man, who lived in a world so far from hers, carried a quiet grace she hadn't seen in years. That evening, as the sky cleared, she found herself walking down to the lobby instead of sending for her car. Arman stood there, waiting as usual. "Ma'am," he greeted, bowing his head slightly. "Arman," she said, her voice thoughtful. "How's your daughter?" He looked up, a bit surprised. "She's good, ma'am. Studying hard. She wants to be a doctor someday." Zara smiled faintly. "Ambitious?" "Yes, ma'am. But she also loves stories. Every night before bed, she asks me to tell her something new." That simple sentence stirred something deep in Zara. She remembered how, as a little girl, her mother used to read to her before bed, until the day her parents' marriage fell apart and love turned into silence. It had been years since anyone had reminded her of that feeling. "Stories are powerful," she said quietly. "Maybe that's how she sees the world, with hope." Arman nodded, and for a brief moment their eyes met, not as employer and employee, but as 2 people who understood the weight of responsibility and the price of loneliness. Over the next few days, Zara's behavior began to change in small, almost invisible ways. She smiled more. She listened when her staff spoke. She even added a small play corner in the office lounge for visitors' children, though everyone knew it was because of Hania. Then, one Friday evening, fate brought a moment neither of them expected. Zara had stayed late in the office, finishing a report when she heard faint laughter echoing down the hallway. Curious, she stepped outside and saw Arman standing by the main door, holding Hania's hand. The little girl, in her pink school uniform, was tracing circles on the marble floor with her shoe while humming to herself. Zara paused, watching them from a distance. Arman looked down at his daughter with the kind of warmth that could melt even the hardest heart. "Just a few more minutes, Beta," he said gently. "Baba's almost done." Hania looked up and spotted Zara. Her big brown eyes widened. "Are you Baba's boss?" she asked innocently. Zara couldn't help but smile. "I suppose I am." The girl tilted her head. "You look like the queen in my fairy book." Arman turned red. "Hania!" he whispered. "That's not..." But Zara laughed, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that surprised even her. "Well, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week." The awkwardness melted. For the first time, Zara wasn't the intimidating CEO. She was simply a woman sharing a laugh with a father and his child. When it was time to leave, Arman reached for his keys, but Zara stopped him. "It's late," she said. "Let me drive you home." He hesitated. "Ma'am, I can't let you." "Arman," she interrupted softly. "Please, just this once." He glanced at Hania, who was already bouncing with excitement. "The Queen's giving us a ride, Baba," she whispered. And so the three of them stepped into Zara's sleek car, a rare reversal of roles. The city lights flickered outside as the car moved through quiet streets. Hania chattered endlessly from the back seat about her school, her favorite storybooks, and how her father made the best aloo parathas in the world. Zara listened, smiling. Every laugh from the little girl filled the car with warmth she hadn't felt in years. When Hania asked, "Do you have kids, Miss Zara?" The question hit softly but deeply. Zara's smile faded for a moment. "No, sweetheart," she replied gently. "I was too busy chasing things that don't smile back." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was honest. As they neared Arman's modest neighborhood, Zara slowed the car. Small houses lined the narrow street, children playing cricket under dim streetlights. It was a world far simpler than hers, humble, alive, real. When they stopped, Hania leaned forward. "Thank you for the ride, Miss Zara." Zara turned back and said, "Thank you for the company, Princess Hania." The girl giggled, then ran inside after kissing her father's cheek. Arman turned back to her. "You didn't have to do this, ma'am." "I wanted to," she said softly. "You and your daughter reminded me of something I lost a long time ago." Arman looked at her, unsure what to say. There was no pity in her voice, no authority either, just sincerity. "You've got a good heart, ma'am," he said quietly. For a moment, Zara didn't reply. She simply watched the small figure of Hania through the window as she waved from inside their home. "You're raising her well, Arman. She'll grow up knowing kindness." "That's rare," he smiled faintly. "I just try to make sure she never feels alone." Zara's eyes glistened in the dim light. "Maybe that's what we all need, someone who doesn't let us feel alone." The two sat in silence for a while, the hum of the city surrounding them. There was no romance, no grand declaration, just two souls finding a quiet understanding. When Arman finally said goodnight and stepped out, Zara remained parked for a few seconds, looking at the small house with the warm light spilling through the curtains. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the heavy emptiness that usually greeted her after work. As she drove away, she whispered to herself, "Not everything has to be forgotten." The next morning, when Arman arrived at work, he found a small envelope tucked inside the driver's seat. Inside was a note in Zara's elegant handwriting. "For Hania's books, every dream deserves a chance to grow." Zara. Arman smiled quietly, folding the note carefully and slipping it into his pocket. That day, when Zara entered the office, their eyes met for a brief second. No words, no gestures, just a shared acknowledgement of something real. For her, it wasn't just a favor repaid. It was the beginning of something genuine, a connection she didn't pretend to forget.